This is the story of the one. As head of maintenance at a concert hall, he knows the show must always go on. That's why he works behind the scenes, ensuring every light is working, the HVAC is humming, and his facility shines. With Grainger's supplies and solutions for every challenge he faces, plus 24/7 customer support, his venue never misses a beat. Call quickgrainger.com or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
This is Scott Richmond
and Arnie Sherman.
You're listening to What Do You Know on Newstalk KGVO, AM 1290 and 98.3 FM. Arnie Sherman, good Sunday morning.
2 Sundays in a row, Scott, with you. This is a new record. We've been laxing in terms of following up week after week with our meetings on Sunday, but now we're 2 in a row, and I'm excited about that.
I am too.
Hey, today we're going to talk about a sport that I don't know much about. That's hard to say.
I know, because you're a sports guy.
I'm a sports guy, but I've never really been a big MMA, mixed martial arts kind of follower. I'm more of a traditionalist, so I like regular boxing. You know, I followed regular boxing since Floyd Patterson and Sonny Liston and Muhammad Ali and Sugar Ray Leonard and all the way up to today. But I really didn't follow mixed martial arts. I mean, I know some of the key people.
Right.
I know Amanda Nunes, who beat Ronda Rousey.
Right.
I know John Jones and Conor McGregor, obviously, who's a larger than life figure. George St. Pierre, those kinds of people. But I don't really follow it. But today we have a Missoula martial arts, mixed martial arts,
right,
jiu-jitsu,
right,
connection with Lauren Wolfe,
right,
who works at Zoo Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I don't even know much about jiu-jitsu. You're the guy who's more connected to this from your Tai Chi background.
Well, no, but don't forget one of our previous guests, Chad Dundas,
right,
who is an author, writer, also is a mixed martial arts writer, right?
Right. But when he came in, he talked more about professional wrestling.
Yes, he did.
So
we need to
get
him
have
back
someone,
too.
Lauren the Linguist Wolfe.
Wonder where the nickname came from.
We're going to find that all out. Plus, she's going to probably bring one of her colleagues with her today.
Yes.
To talk about her professional career, and now that she's, retired, apparently.
Lauren is,
and is training other people. I want to know what the scene is like in Missoula, Montana.
And Montana in general.
Yeah, I just saw recently, and I forget in what class and what round, but a Butte, Montana guy won his weight division.
He's famous.
Fairly famous. And again, I'm excited because I don't know much about this, and I want to find out more. And I really don't know much about the women's side of it, and how that compares, and where do they get their training.
So you've never been to a mixed martial arts fight?
No.
So we've been to them. I've been to them a few times. The most recent was at the Adams Center a few years ago, and it's a really interesting sport to watch. I found it to be a little boring, and I'm just going to say that because what was happening was it was either they were done in the first 20 seconds.
Right. Somebody kicked them in the head and it was done.
Or they got him into a submission.
Right.
Or they lasted the full, I think it's 5 rounds. And you were just like, okay, nothing happened. Like there was just a lot of like patty cake.
So compare it to like watching Golden Gloves or watching regular boxing. More action in boxing for you?
I feel like there's more action in boxing, but then again, that's why Lauren can help us understand it and understand how it goes. And I'm going to bring it up to her and say, hey, I've been to some of these fights, but then I've been to some great fights where they were
right.
They were
well,
smash
it's a combination
fests.
of things that maybe on their own are more boring. I mean, watching wrestling, like at the Olympics in college,
boring.
It's kind of boring.
Yeah, you're right.
You pin a guy and that's that.
But professional wrestling,
yeah, well, that's theatrical. Obviously, and there's characters and and all that sort of thing. So, we're used to that.
I agree. Well, when we come back, our guest will be Lauren Wolfe and guest.
Yeah, guest and guest.
Guest and guest right after these words. Arnie Sherman, we are back when we have two gals in the studio here. Lauren, the linguist Wolfe.
Retired.
And
training people now, so that's kind of an interesting approach to learn about.
And Jenn Greenwald, her partner / teacher / what? What are we saying?
Well, Jen's actually my coach for
Your
jiu-jitsu.
coach.
Yep, and
That's the one I
I'm
was
her
looking
coach for striking at this point. So
That's
But
pretty
it's
cool.
a partnership of sorts.
Yes.
And Jen fights in a category I'd never heard of before, the Atom category.
Yep, atom weight,
Atom weight, because you're fighting in the 105 category.
105.
So let's start off with the retiree here, Jen. Jen, how did you start your career?
No, Jen, that's
excuse
Lauren.
Excuse me. It's confusing. I'm old and focused.
Lauren.
Lauren the linguist.
Yes.
Wolfe. How did you get into this originally?
it actually started with a cardio kickboxing class when Dog Pound was at Access Fitness. And I just went to those bag classes for years, pretty much. And that was when Ronda Rousey was all the rage.
And Dog Pound is a training, is a school, right?
Yes, that's the MMA team in Missoula.
Right.
I think personally,
Right.
I'm a little bit biased, but yeah. So it was when Ronda Rousey was all the rage, and of course I saw her, and I was like, I want to be that cool.
Until she fought Amanda, right? Until she
yes.
fought Amanda Nunez, and then you
Holly
wanted to be
Holm.
her.
Yeah, it's Holly Holm that took her out.
Right,
but
I know.
yeah.
That kick.
But didn't
That was
Amanda
beautiful.
Nunez also beat her? I'm pretty sure she did.
I honestly can't remember if they fought or not.
Yes, they
I
fought and
think-
she lost,
I
and
think you're
Nunez
right,
won.
But
anyway,
yeah.
that's all I know, by the way, about mixed martial. I'm done. That's all my. That's my
all right.
full
My
repertoire.
memory is like not so great. So I've seen a bunch of fights that I don't remember, you know? That's what happens when you get hit in the head. So
And is that why you don't fight anymore?
I don't fight anymore because I had a neck injury. And it was actually causing me to not be able to take a punch anymore. I was getting dropped like almost every practice, or at least like getting really wobbled to the point I was
Wow.
like, that's not good. But when your neck goes out, you know, it makes your like head snap, and that causes a little bit more rattling of the brain. So I guess it was a little bit head trauma, but if my neck hadn't gone out, I'd probably still be doing it. But
And what class did you fight in?
I was a bantamweight, so 135.
135. Okay, Jen, what got you into this?
Lauren,
Excuse me, Lauren got you into this.
she bought me gloves, MMA gloves, for Christmas one year.
But how did you know each other? How did you get to know each other?
From jiu-jitsu classes.
Got it. So you were doing jujitsu, but then you're like, hey, I need you to fight. I want you to fight. Got it.
I was the only girl for a very long time at my MMA gym, and I kept trying to get Jen to come with me because I was like, you already know how to grapple. You might as well come learn how to punch people too. And yeah, I coaxed her into it by buying those gloves.
How did you get to the jujitsu class? What was the impetus of that?
I am just super competitive, and I wanted to find something competitive outside of college sports
And you grew up where?
in Cut Bank, Montana.
In Cut Bank, Montana. And that that competitiveness manifested itself through what sports or what activities?
Volleyball and softball.
Volleyball and softball.
Now I have to say,
Completely different. Yeah.
you are, our listeners can't see, but you are more diminutive. So how did you? What position did you play in volleyball?
Libero.
Aha.
Yeah, strictly back row. I never had to jump ever. I could actually run directly underneath
I
the
can
net.
play volleyball.
She's 100. Oh,
If
she's
I played the
105
back row.
Right, 105 pounds atom weight.
Yes.
Right? How tall are you?
410.
410. Okay. Lawrence 135, well, was 135, bantamweight. I don't know what you weigh now. I don't want to ask. That's not appropriate.
Yeah.
But so just so we describe the scene here, and you both are in a competitive jujitsu situation, but then the transition over to grappling is, how do you make that decision? Besides your friend coaxing you into doing that.
For me, it was a martial art where I didn't have to depend on my length and size as much.
Sure.
The ground's kind of an equalizer. So jiu-jitsu, since you're just taking somebody straight to the ground, I can use the ground to my advantage, and I don't have to worry as much about length of people.
So so your opponents are also similar weight, obviously same weight, right? Is it a vibrant group of people that are fighting in that weight class, or it's very narrow? It's a small group.
It's a pretty small
No
group.
pun intended, but
Yeah.
it's a small.
It is a very
Scott, you're
small
going to get
group.
yourself in so much
I know,
trouble here.
I know, Arnie.
You have to
should be,
correct
what did I know?
your adjectives, as we're talking
What
about
did I
this.
know?
Yeah, right.
But wait a minute. So, because I'm so fascinated with this. So you're doing that, and you're doing that weight class, et cetera, so forth, right? And you're fighting. And what was that spark that said, I got to do this? Like, I got to do more of this? Because I got to believe the first couple of fights was kind of nerve-wracking.
Yes, it still is. It always is. If you're not nervous, you're probably dead.
That's good to know. So you're fighting professionally,
Yes,
and you get paid.
I get paid.
And have you won
That's awesome.
fights?
No,
But you want. But you're on the
Why haven't you-
precipice of winning.
I've had one pro fight. And
Oh,
I'm going to tell this story for Jen.
Yeah, go ahead.
You asked how many people there are out there doing this. There's not a lot. So
Right.
in order for Jen to get a fight, she had to go pro right away. She'd already. Were you a purple belt or a brown belt in jiu-jitsu? She was a purple belt in jiu-jitsu, so her grappling was very high level.
Right.
And she'd been striking for quite a while too. So our coach decided that she would be good to just go pro right away.
Right.
And that's a lot to take on in your first fight because the difference between amateur and pro, first of all, amateurs have 3-minute rounds and pros have 5-minute rounds. You also have, as a pro, elbows and knees to the head, whereas those are not things you have to deal with in amateur fights.
Sure.
And she was the headliner on the card. So there was a lot
Where was
going
the
on
card?
for
Where was
her
the fight?
first fight.
It was in Helena.
And Helena.
Yeah.
and
Got
how
it.
big a crowd?
I don't know.
Honestly, crowd sizes for MMA in Montana tend to be pretty small, but as far as those crowds go, it was a good sized one.
Don't we have
Adam Center.
Don't we have a champion from Montana though on the men's side of things?
From Butte.
From Butte.
Is he? What's his
I
name?
Oh, are you talking about Sean O'Malley?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is he not from Butte?
I don't think he's champ, but he is from Butte.
He
Yes.
is from Butte. Okay, he's
Yes.
not a champ.
And he's very high level. I mean, he's one of the best.
But he's
for
fighting
sure.
nationally. You see him on national TV.
Yeah, you see him on
Yeah,
national
he's
TV.
in the
fight.
UFC, which is the dream. So
Is that your dream?
I don't know if I want to do UFC per se.
she's too small. They don't have her weight
They don't,
class.
they don't have the
Why not?
mini me class.
There's not a lot of atom weights out there for them to.
She could
promote
fight
and fight.
for Invicta, which is like an all-female pro league. It's pretty big. That's a good organization, and they have her weight class. But
And they could create a persona for you, right? Do you have a nickname?
I do.
Which is?
The hateful halfling.
I like that.
I do too.
Yeah, the double H's.
I have to believe that when people find out that you fight, well, that anyone fights, but that you fight, that people underestimate you,
100%.
which is great.
Yes.
How great is that? What a competitive advantage.
it is so fun to watch guys come into our gym, because especially with grappling,
I love
striking,
that.
it's
Yeah.
a little bit different because if you take a punch, like there are such things as lucky punches, and no matter how much you
Right.
train, you're going to get hit. But with jiu-jitsu, it's hilarious to watch guys come in and just either go super easy on her and then she submits them over and over, or they come at her, just like they're going to take her out and she's so fast and she just spins around to their back and then they can't
Get her.
they can't get her, and it's amazing. It's really fun to watch.
I love this. This is This is a great story.
Right. So, Lauren, how many fights did you have?
I had 3 pro fights and 5 amateur fights.
Right. And how many of those did you win?
I lost 3 out of, oh my goodness, I can't even math. Is that
8?
Yeah.
So,
I lost
not a
so
good
you were
average.
5-3.
Yep.
5-3.
Yes. In my pro career, I was 2-1.
That's not bad, right? I mean, you're happy. It's
I'm pretty happy with
yeah.
it.
667 is a good winning percentage in most sports.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
You'll take that.
If you were
almost
batting
anywhere.
that, you'd be...
Yeah. I barely even count my first fight anyway because I was winning, and then I just forgot I could get armbarred, and I got armbarred. So
Oh.
I don't even count that one. All right, that fight doesn't count because then I fought her again in my second fight, and I knocked her out.
Nice.
Perfect. So, Ronda Rousey was an inspiration for you. Do you have a professional inspiration for you?
Not really for MMA, but for jiu-jitsu, I have the top 2, which I guess one of them just went into the UFC. Mackenzie Dern was one of the first female jiu-jitsu athletes that I watched in 15 pounds, and she
So-
took on one of the biggest weight brackets in an absolute division and smashed the girl, so that was fun.
That was good
Yeah.
to have your
That
person
is
do
cool.
that.
Yeah, it was really
Is
fun.
there an age range on this thing? Is there an age that where you get to the point where you really can't do this anymore?
No, not really.
Because I've seen people in the 30, 35, 37, 38 fighting, and neither of you are at that point. But you can do this for a fairly long time.
Even
long as you stay
especially
in good
with
shape.
especially with grappling, we have one of the black belts in our gym is I don't know in his 50s. Yeah, and he can crush almost everyone in there. So
And you say
good.
grappling different than, explain the difference.
grappling is any of your ground stuff. So it's jiu-jitsu and wrestling and judo. It can also be you can consider like clinch fighting. a grappling sport, anything where you're actually like controlling the other person's body with your body.
You know that Scott is a nationally renowned Tai Chi practitioner.
Not really, but okay. No, wait a minute.
But he has practiced it. How many years were you into Tai Chi?
Oh, God. For like 10 years.
You're going to have to tell me about that because I'm pretty curious about that.
Well.
That's maybe another show. We'll have Scott put him on the hot seat.
That sounds good.
You and I
like
can
it.
interview him, and we can do that.
So let's go back. Let's rewind a little bit, okay? You grew up Cut Bank. Where are you in the pecking order? Siblings? Or are you an only child?
I'm the youngest. I have an older sister.
An older sister. Did the older sister have anything to do with your competitiveness?
Yes and no.
Turning
my
red,
freshman, my freshman year. I don't know if she's gonna like me telling the story, but I'm gonna tell it anyway.
Good.
My freshman year of high school, she was a junior, and we tried out for the same volleyball team, and I made varsity, and she did not. And from that point on, my mom and dad had to make a rule that we were not allowed to try out for the same sports.
Why?
From that point on, because it caused so much havoc in the household.
Was she taller than you?
Yes, she is taller than me. Yeah.
But you're so competitive.
Yes.
Well, what else is the source of that competitiveness?
My dad is very competitive as well.
And explain how.
He didn't really play any team sports all through high school and college, but he was always captain of like all of his clubs. So he was in like French club and chess club, and
He's accomplished.
yes.
So I have a marketing advice for you. As I see you standing there in black and yellow. I'm thinking her professional name ought to be the bee.
Yeah.
You know, float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. I think you look perfect for the bee and dressed always
Sting
in black
like a
and
bee.
yellow.
Sting like a bee.
And sting like
from
the bee.
Muhammad
and float,
Ali, you know
and
that,
float
right?
like
Yeah.
the butterfly. So instead of HH, we're going to flip you to BB.
BB.
Yeah.
Tell us your origin story.
Yeah.
So I suppose, like I said, it was that,
Ronda Rousey.
yep, Ronda
But
Rousey.
you
and
grew
just-
up where?
I grew up here in Missoula. I grew up riding horses, and I grew up with an older brother who was the most competent human being I've ever met in my whole life. And in his shadow, kind of, always being told that I was kind of a wimp. And I don't know, I got to a point in my life where I was like, I have to do something to prove to everyone that I'm not a wimp, and to myself as well.
Awesome.
And fighting definitely did that for me. Like, more than words can even explain, I was able to prove to myself. And I actually feel like that's part of the reason I ended up retiring when I did, was because I finally realized, like, oh, I don't need to prove this anymore.
Sure.
I've done it. I'm good to go. And now I can just hopefully share that with other people through coaching and whatnot.
Some people who have fought or have been a competitor in a sport who switch to the coaching part, it never really measures up to their experience of actually being in the thick of things. How do you feel vis-a-vis actually fighting with the coaching role now?
I used to really dislike coaching. You can even ask Jenn. I'd always talk about, like, I can't do it. It makes me really nervous. I'm afraid I'm going to give bad advice. And, like, I don't want to be responsible for their performance. But once, I don't know, she kind of forced me to start teaching my striking class. She just asked me over and over and over. And finally, I was like, okay, I'll do like a very basic beginner striking class. And I don't know, the more I've done it, the more I've grown to really like it. And just seeing going to my class, and we spar at the end of every class. And I remember when I first started teaching, no one could do anything. And now they hit me. Like, when I spar with them, they're hitting me almost as much as I'm hitting them. And it feels so good to know that
you've helped them develop to that.
I'm the person that's, taught them that. So.
And Jen, you fight and also coach a little and teach, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And so now you're doing both simultaneously. How do they fit together for you?
Well, that works out really well for me because I own the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu gym here in town. So on top of just my coaching, and I get to train Jiu-Jitsu every single
You're
day.
the owner.
after
You're
class.
the business person.
Yeah.
And so how does
still
a
new, but-
Jiu-Jitsu gym, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu gym,
Yeah.
do in a place like Missoula, Montana?
We have 7 different jiu-jitsu gyms in Missoula.
Really?
So it's a super high number. In a place like
That's amazing.
Spokane, there's 3 or 4 that I know of.
Really? So what do you attribute that to? Why do
And what
we
does
have
it mean
7?
to have a gym, by the way? Where is the gym located? In
Right
7
off
different
of-
locations or 7 different... What does it mean, 7?
7 different affiliations of jiu-jitsu gyms.
Affiliations. Okay.
Yes.
So what does that mean?
You use
there's-
different facilities to
Yes.
yes.
Different businesses.
different
Okay, so you're-
businesses, different lineages. So each gym
I
has its
see.
own lineage. So my instructor is Robert Brown, and he's based out of Seattle. And then his instructor is based out of Illinois. And then his instructor's a Gracie.
So people
I
go
see.
there based on who's going to instruct them.
yes.
Ah. So it's
That's
like going to a golfing coach. I want to go to the one that Tiger used, or I want to.
Correct.
Right. So
Got
people
it.
follow that.
Yep.
That's interesting.
So the competitions for jiu-jitsu is kind of where most of my time lies right now, since I took over the gym about a year ago. But I'm just getting back into, since Lauren started her striking class, gives me an opportunity to get back into the whole striking and hopefully take a fight by the end of this year.
How many
So,
students do you have?
we just had about 100. So
100.
That's a lot. That's
And
really
how
a
do,
lot.
what's the pay structure? How do they pay? Like
month by month.
month by month?
Yep, it's just like any other gym membership. You pay for a month at a time. And
Right.
And what's
can't
the
finish
average
whenever.
monthly expense cost?
It's $145 for unlimited classes for the month. So that'll get you into any single class, as
That's
many
a good
classes as
business.
you want for
That's
the
a
entire
nice
month.
little business.
We also do have a gym area in the back
Yep,
of
we have a
like
full
a
workout
lifting,
space.
yeah, workout space.
Good.
Got it.
So if somebody's thinking about, one of our listeners is thinking about making a career out of this, can you make, as a professional, can you make a full-time living in this? I mean, it doesn't compare, obviously, to, UCF or to, you're going to see, UFC, excuse me. That's how much I know. UFC. But it was, or it's not going to compare to the Tyson Jake Paul fight, right?
Right.
But what can you tell the listeners about a career in this?
Starting out and fighting in Montana, you're
Yes.
not going to get paid a lot.
Right.
It definitely goes up. The more fights you've had, the more experience you have, and the bigger promotions you can work your way into. So in addition to having a lot of skills in fighting, you definitely have to have the personality to
Right.
draw a crowd. And I mean, your pay is directly correlated to how many people want to watch you fight. So
Right.
if you're
Right.
So if you're Conor McGregor and
yeah,
you're
if
larger
a
than
fun-
life,
exactly. If you're a fun personality, you can definitely make a career of this, and you can make like pretty good money.
yeah.
Yeah, there's a trade off, and you're going to end up retiring pretty early. I mean, I retired at 30, so there's that. But
So a lot of people will do this, will fight professionally, but they're also doing other things in their lives. They can't, which is fine, right? Like what a cool thing to be able to do.
oh yeah,
Like on the weekends or wherever, you're like, I'll pack your gym bag and you're going to Billings for a big fight.
Well,
Oh, yeah.
it falls into the category in some ways of competitive sports, but they don't have the same, viewership and money behind them. Like I always think I knew people who bowled professionally, were professional bowlers. But unless you're the top 25 of those people, you have to have other work that you're doing.
Yes.
You own
Right.
a bowling alley or a Brazilian jiu-jitsu business.
Yeah.
You have to have other things.
Right.
Unless you're one of the top, 20.
Well, I was
25
listening
of
to a
those.
podcast with Dana White the other day.
Yeah.
And just to bone up for this meeting
Right.
and for this conversation. And he was always into fighting. Like that was his thing. He's from Boston, always into fighting, and had he had an incredible belief that anything he would do in this space, he would be successful. And he just committed everything to it. And sure enough, look where he is, right? What is the Frittata? What are the brothers' names?
the Frittata brothers.
The
Yeah.
Furtado brothers, who are kind of the money behind what he does, but he's an owner too.
Yep.
It's kind of amazing. I mean, it's kind of amazing. It is the most popular sport. I mean,
It's definitely growing. I know it's the number one growing sport, I think, in the U.S. right now.
It's not pickleball.
that pickleball might have taken over.
Yeah,
I'm
right,
not
right.
sure.
but isn't it amazing, Arnie?
Yeah.
When you and I grew up, it was boxing, wrestling, whatever,
Right,
tennis.
but when we were growing up, before television, in my case,
Right.
no, when we were growing up, wrestling was big, but it only had a limit. It didn't have what it had until WWF came around.
Right,
and
right,
all
right,
that.
right, right.
There were guys working, but
Professional
they weren't making the kind of money they make now, and in the post
Right.
WWF area. boxing did, relatively speaking, because because
big
it was all in
gates.
one tent. There was only one global champion. They didn't have
Right.
They didn't have competing
WBA,
things.
WBC.
Yeah.
I actually think wrestling is part of the reason that MMA is growing the way it is because so many people have realized, like, I mean, wrestling, it's pretty hard to keep doing it after college, and most
Right.
people don't even get to do it into college.
Right.
So people are coming out of high school and they're like, well, what am I going to, like, I've been wrestling since I was a little kid. I can't just quit that now. And they realize there's a sport where wrestlers dominate. Wrestlers dominate MMA. And so
Right,
they
right.
just learn a couple extra skills and
But he's even saying professional wrestling, like professional wrestling as a sport, really took what boxing was doing and amped it up with the explosion.
And it developed. I mean, there was always personalities in the 50s and 60s
With
and
boxing.
70s with
Oh,
boxing
wrestling, too.
and with wrestling.
Right, Gorgeous
but it
George.
Never, yeah, gorgeous. But I mean, but it never hit where it's at with with John Cena or The Rock
Right.
or people like that become billionaires,
Right.
and that became their launching post.
For film, right.
Even Conor McGregor was just in Roadhouse with Jake Gyllenhaal,
Which was great, by the way.
Yeah.
That was fun to watch.
Well, the fighting scenes were pretty good.
They
Did
were
you see
amazing.
I
it?
haven't seen
Oh,
it yet,
no,
but
it's
I've heard
great.
good things.
It was pretty good.
Well, that's a good question. Like Rowdy Ronda Rousey, right? Took her name from Roddy Piper.
Right.
Okay, she's a character, right? McGregor, a character. Who are the other characters of MMA that we should know?
I would say Sean O'Malley is definitely
Sean
one
O'Malley?
of
Is he
the
a character?
characters right now.
What's his gimmick? What's his theme?
Can you like picture him in your head right
Yeah,
now?
yeah.
He's got crazy hair. He's got tattoos
it.
on his face. He talks a lot of crap.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's just it's kind of Conor McGregor-esque. I feel like
Yeah,
that's
right,
what people
right.
tend to like is the very confident,
He's a
cocky.
little bit chaotic when he fights. You never know kind of what to expect with his fighting
Really?
style.
Tell me what. So what does that
It's
look
just
like?
he'll like jump off the cage and like spin and back fist and flip all over. Like he's really entertaining to watch.
How does he
his-
not get smacked? How does he not get hammered?
His striking is so precise. Like, I mean, he wins fights just because his timing is on the money and he has such good feints and he moves around in ways people don't expect. And
Right.
Right, we're
Yep.
looking at a picture of him.
Yep, rainbow hair.
Yep.
Face.
Yep.
So he is taking it to the next level in many ways.
Oh,
He's
yeah.
trying to be in that same
He's
deal.
a little more WWE.
I would say so. Yeah, I feel like that is definitely a thing that's
The attitude.
catching on. People are really trying to do the attitude, but not many people do it well. He does it pretty well.
So what's amazing about MMA is that anywhere, anytime, there could be a professional fight going on. It doesn't have to just be in Vegas, New York, LA. It could be anywhere.
Oh yeah, we all start out typically in tiny little hometown venues, and it just grows from there.
Is it always in an octagon?
The octagon is actually specifically a UFC thing, but people will make their cages as close to an octagon as they can typically, or it's at least round with chain link.
So when they do those fights over at the Adams Center, what is it? What's the name of it? Strike Force or
Fusion.
Fusion fights? They're trying to replicate as close as they possibly can at UFC.
That is what everyone's doing, yes.
Got it. Okay.
So here's
This is so good.
a little background for our listeners, like talking about Sean O'Malley.
Yep.
Probably arguably the most successful Montana, fighter in this area. He was a brown belt in jiu-jitsu.
Yep.
And they say his net worth this year is about in 2024 is about $4 million. So you would say it's not so easy to make $4 million in Montana, right? He's one of probably the most successful
incredible.
professionals in any sport out of Montana.
Oh yeah,
Which is incredible.
it is.
Wait, look, quick ID. Our guests are Jenn Greenwald and Lauren
Wolfe.
Forgive me. From our MMA team
That's
here.
right.
to talk to us.
In Missoula, Montana, right here in Missoula, Montana, where we have 100 people in training. They're going
Just
to have their
in
own little
Jenn's
army.
school.
We're going to call it Jenn's Army.
Yeah, that's just in Jen's school. That doesn't even count so many of the other gyms that we know. So yeah, there's a lot of people out there learning to fight.
So let's think about this for a second. So young people coming up in elementary school, middle school, they're going to martial arts classes, right? And they're taking martial arts classes. Do they see, there's a pathway from those schools that they're in? A lot of kids are just taking classes just for self-defense, for confidence, for just life, right? How do you find the person that has the spark in their eye to say, I see you there. I need to bring you over here to be a little more competitive. So what's that? How does that look? I'll look at you first, Jen. How does that work?
You can usually just tell based on how much effort they put into classes right off the bat. If somebody asks certain questions during warm-ups of like, hey, I can't quite get this movement down. Is this okay if I do this instead? Or if they're really dedicated in their timing of trying the one move that I've taught multiple times over and over and over again until they get it down really well. That's usually one of the first, and it is a spark that you see in the eye of like when they connect two things together of, oh, I can also do this move and at the same time put it toward this other thing that I know how to do. That like just gives them the ladder to keep climbing, and eventually they get to the point of the ladder where like, hey, I think you hit the top of this ladder.
Mm-hmm.
I have a taller one over here. Do you want to come try this class out and see what you think of that?
And what percentage of the people that you work with go to that level?
Every single one of them. It depends. Everybody's got a different timeline.
Okay.
Which is kind of how we rank people in jiu-jitsu in general. So Lauren and I are brown belts in Brazilian jiu-jitsu. But when we first started at white belt, it was here's, the position, here's a couple moves from there, and you build on that. And so every single belt level, they should know at least 1 to 2 to 3 moves from each position. And so by the time they hit their blue belt, they should be pretty proficient in all of jiu-jitsu. And then by purple belt, you're working on something that you really like to do out of jiu-jitsu. Okay. That could be inverting and going upside down in order to strangle somebody, or that could be taking them back, or it could be,
or hiring you to strangle somebody.
If you ever need a bodyguard,
yeah, well, I do.
Jen's the person to call.
I volunteer.
The B is the B that I will call. So let me ask you about the converse of this. Do you run into situations where, for example, parents bring their kids in and the kid clearly doesn't want to do this? And if that happens, what do you do about that?
I just teach the class and I tell the kid, listen, you're here for the 45 minutes and I want you to be here and I want you to enjoy your time here. Jiu-jitsu might not be for you and that's okay. But since you're here, let's work with what we have. Like if you don't want to do jiu-jitsu, that's fine. But put forth the effort so that other kids can also learn.
And that's a very positive approach. I remember when I used to go to gym and they want you to climb the ropes up to the ceiling, and I really didn't want to do that and couldn't do that. And I had a coach that was not like that. He says, "You suck. Get out of my gym." One of those kind of coaches.
Discouraging.
Jen is the best kids coach of all time because she's really not that much bigger than they are.
I'm actually outsized by many of them.
When it comes to wrestling and jiu-jitsu and grappling, they get to have a coach that has all of the knowledge that she has, but is pretty close to the same size as them, and that's, I feel like, pretty beneficial to our kids.
So I think knowledge is super important, but the one thing that strikes me, no pun intended again, about the two of you guys is your positivity. Like, I see you both are just like, this is it. This is your thing. Like, you guys beam the positivity about what you're talking about. Is that something that you are aware of, that you feel this way, or is it just you go through life like this is who I am?
Kind of both. I feel like.
Explain.
For me, it started as like, oh, I just want to learn jiu-jitsu as something that I can compete in. And then when I got proficient enough, I was like, oh, this is actually really cool. Maybe I could, start teaching this at some point because I was that proficient at it. And then with teaching it, you'd understand it so much better. And then it became something that I was like, oh, I'm not just good at this. This is like part of me now.
This is directly connected to your volleyball experience as a freshman.
Probably,
It is. I mean, I see the through line.
It's a next level because volleyball is a team sport, and this is really not a team sport. This is the individual competition. What about you? What about the same question for you, Jen?
I definitely.
Excuse me, Lauren.
It's entirely captivating. I mean, fighting for me isn't just something I do. It becomes part of who you are. And jiu-jitsu is great because you don't have to get punched in the face to experience those same feelings of, connectedness to your gym. You have a whole group of people now that it doesn't matter where you fall ideologically on anything. You all have this common thing that you do. So you develop really close friendships. You have a skill that is not just a hobby, but also it's an actual skill. If something happened, you at least have some confidence in your abilities to handle situations. it's really hard. So every day you're going in there and doing something really hard, but you enjoy it. And that transfers to other parts of your life too, you know? Like,
So for both of you, if you were going to train me to fight,
Arnie
or
Sherman.
what?
No, Arnie.
Oh, yeah,
Sherman.
Arnie. Or a younger version of me. And I came in to see you. What would you tell me that I had to do to prepare myself? And what would you tell me I was committing myself to do?
I don't know about Jen, but I'd just tell you all you have to do is show up and
You'll take it from there?
and be there. Yep. And stretch and eat healthy so that you don't get injured.
Recovery is key too.
Yeah.
At a certain point, you have to learn how to calm down. Recovery was a big piece of my
because
career that I was missing.
you're so
for a
engaged
while.
to it, and you put so much energy into it, and maybe even
But what-
I don't want to say anger, but there's got to be some hyper intensity to it when you're fighting somebody. I
Yes.
mean, it's a human instinct.
Well, show it. Do me a favor. I'm going to illustrate for the group. Show us a particular lock or hold, a jujitsu, something between the two of you right now, so we can explain it. Because I still don't fully understand what it is.
Oh, if we had enough room, Jen could hip toss me, which would be really fun.
Okay, so it's a hip toss.
That's
What
one of
else
them.
is it?
It starts on the feet, and then from there you can transition onto the ground, and you can either submit and like joint locks,
Show.
so any sort of
Can you-
armbar,
Let's
Kimura.
armbar me.
All right, they're doing it right now here. Okay, Lauren's on her back on the ground. Jen, Jen is stretching her right now, stretching her arm, and she tapped out with a. So that's what it is. But that reminds me of MMA.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
you got submissions in MMA as well. So jiu-jitsu is probably the key to the ground game of MMA. That's where all of your submissions. Wrestling is very important too when it
I
comes
see.
to like controlling, but jiu-jitsu is your strangles and your joint locks.
So how much when you're either of you are fighting, because you fought the same type of fighting, how much of it is you using your arms and how much is it using the rest of your body?
Oh, it's full body all the time. Yeah.
So in a fight, how many punches do you throw?
Jeez Louise.
It definitely depends on the
Easily.
fighter. People who are much more inclined to grappling and much more inclined to striking. So Jen, for instance, probably isn't going to throw that many punches because she's a very good
She's got a low
grappler.
center of gravity. She can take someone out at the
Exactly. So
Right.
she will
Amazing.
typically like crash into people and try to like hold them and get them to the ground from there. And then she does like ground and pound. So when you're on the ground and you're throwing punches from there.
Yeah.
Right,
Yes,
that's
it
good. She
is.
likes
Wait,
that.
Jen, so that's great. So being wow, this is so cool. So then when you can get someone down on the ground, you don't care how you get there as long as you get them there, right?
Yes, correct.
That is it's which is so great. That's
You should never overcomplicate some of the simplest things. Like
Right.
You're fighting somebody, you know you're probably going to get punched in the face. If you have a plan of attack, mine is always getting to the ground, and I feel very comfortable on the ground.
Right.
Lauren loves her kicks, and so knowing when I spar Lauren that she's probably going to try to kick me, of figuring out how to get around her leg length
Right.
in order to get into a clinch.
What ounce gloves do you wear when you fight?
Pros are
4 ounces.
4 ounces. But just sparring, we wear anywhere from 10 to 16
And
ounces.
Jen's the
men's
only one who
gloves
wears 10.
men's gloves are heavier.
Like my husband wears 16-ounce gloves and I wear 14 and Jen wears 10. There's no like you
Right.
don't have to.
You don't have to wear the same size.
For big guys, it's nicer if they wear heavier gloves.
Right.
And yeah.
So when you
Right.
go
Right.
into a grappling situation into a fight, you're basically going in with your strategy. You know who your opponent is. You know what their strengths and weaknesses are. Your goal is to try to figure out how to get them down on the ground.
Yes.
So how will you get there? Like what will the plan be to take their legs out clearly, right?
Yeah.
Not to go after their head. Because,
I like what is called dirty boxing. So if you can get into a very close situation where you're almost like shoulder to shoulder, like very close touching wise, I can usually work takedowns out of there to get to
How?
the ground. Like
Don't
body,
give away any of your secrets to Scott.
Yeah, but what would that look like? Like I'm just curious. So if you're like shoulder to shoulder, what do you go down and
Yeah, it starts with like intertwining arms and you're like pummeling and then getting into a body lock.
and then
She
pulling leg.
basically hugs them and
hug
then
them to
trips
death.
them over backwards.
Yes.
That's
Got
a good
it.
move.
Okay,
That's
got
a
it,
good move.
got it.
So let me
my
ask you this: you're fighting. They're referees. How do they get trained? I mean, this is not a normal thing. I haven't seen a thing saying, "Come here and learn how to train to be a mixed martial arts ref."
Most of them are fighters, right?
You hope so.
Right.
'Cause if they're not, they
good
tend to be
ones
pretty
typically
bad.
are.
So I don't exactly know how people become boxing judges
Right.
or boxing refs, but
Right.
a lot of times boxing refs and judges will come over to MMA, and that's when it's not so good because
'Cause
they
they
don't know MMA and they don't understand grappling, which is a very confusing thing to watch if you've never done it. So
Right.
you typically hope that your ref and judges are going to have trained
Right.
MMA or grappling in some fashion.
Talk a little bit about nutrition because you said that at first.
She
Eating.
was talking. She looked at me and said nutrition immediately, so I understood what that meant.
I'm looking at Lauren.
I was not
And then
trying to
we'll go to
insult you.
Jen.
No, I know that.
I would say, like, when you're training, you definitely have to drink a lot of water. Your joints are, you're
Fluids.
training to hurt people.
Right.
You're going to get hurt, and there's no way around it. So you've just got to really supply your body with as much vitamins and
Fluids.
everything it needs as possible, right? Yeah, lots
Right.
of fluids, lots of fish oil especially if you're striking.
Right.
Try to coat those neurons in your brain. So lots of fatty fish and stuff like that, and water and vegetables.
No
That's-
red meat because red meat's inflammation.
I eat red meat all the time. I suppose it depends on the person.
How about you, Jen? What's your nutrition?
Chicken and vegetables. Keep it simple, straightforward.
Protein and leafy vegetables.
I love like broccoli, carrots.
Green
Right.
Yeah.
and
So-
orange.
So are there
Salads are not my forte. If I have to eat a salad, something's wrong.
there's
Really?
rules and
I
Yeah.
love it.
I was going to say there are rules and regulations. Do people that fight professionally in MMA get drug tested or urine tested or?
You have to do blood work and you have to have a physical beforehand. So
But with drug testing, that typically only happens when you get to a higher level organization where they can afford to pay for drug tests.
so if there's not, people could take steroids at your
Absolutely. So any of the smaller organizations, they don't have the money to test the athletes. So
So it's
Yeah,
free for
it's a
all,
free
right?
for all.
Right.
Yeah.
Zoom out for a second. We're in Missoula, Montana. Tell us what other communities in Montana have strong MMA / grappling communities.
Billings has a very big gym. I think they have two pretty solid ones, but they have the Grindhouse in Billings, which is a very well-known
Legit.
gym in Montana. And then Helena has quite a few.
yeah, and Montana MMA in Bozeman.
Yep. And then
okay.
Copper City Combat Club in Butte just opened. And
You would think Butte would have a lot of tough.
I think they
fighters.
have more boxers,
Yeah.
but they now have an MMA gym, and the wife of the guy who owns that one, or I think they own it together. But the couple who owns that, the wife fought for the UFC Contender Series.
Wow.
So that was pretty cool.
Wow. And then go regionally now. If we go into Idaho, northern Idaho and Washington, are there schools there that are also very competitive that you guys know about?
There's a few there's one in Boise I know that is really good, and they've produced quite a few high-level fighters.
Got it. Anywhere? How about the Dakotas going east?
There's
I'm
not much
not
that comes
been
out
that
of
way.
there.
I was going to say there can't be. It's got to be
They just
Washington.
shoot dogs over there.
Now we know.
That's their sport.
What's her name? Gnome.
There was that. I'm going to say it on anyway. There was a meme yesterday that was. It was.
Right.
It was the Wizard of Oz meme where she says to little Toto, "Toto, it's okay. We're not going to South Dakota."
Oh my God.
I know.
It's so true. Talk about the dog pound.
Yeah.
So okay. So regionally, there's some strong schools too. Do you guys travel? Have you traveled to? Have you been to Asia? Have you gone to the motherland of?
Not out of the country. My last fight, it's all been in the U.S., but my
Or
last fight
Brazilian.
was in Arizona. And then Jen travels all over the place for jiu-jitsu.
But in the States though.
So where else have you been?
Jiu-jitsu wise, I've had way more jiu-jitsu competitions. So there's a big federation called the International Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu Federation, and they bring people in from all over the world for their big competitions.
And where do they usually hold them? Like Orlando?
Vegas is a big one. It's called IBJJF Worlds and
Okay.
Masters Worlds, and that's in June and August, and those are both in Vegas. And then there's one in Long Beach, and then one in Florida.
Okay.
I would be remiss if I didn't ask you, what is the difference between Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu
Oh, good
and
question.
the Asian form of it?
I have only trained Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I think it's pretty fairly similar. The only big difference would be Japanese Jiu-Jitsu, which is more judo-based. So it's a lot more throws, and they don't usually get into wrestling type things.
Right. That's what that would have been my guess as well, after watching that.
It's incredible when we think about this. I'm amazed, actually, how these sports have proliferated. And like we were saying before, pickleball, MMA,
New sports coming
new
up.
sports, right? And
I mean, I don't know anybody who bowls anymore. I'm sure there are, but I know lots of people who are playing.
in
pick-
Hamilton.
Gen ball?
I do not.
I want to see you throw a 16-pound ball down the alley.
Jen, what do you? I'm going to ask this to both of you. What do you guys do when you're not doing this? What your day job is this, right? This is your job.
I work at Benson's Farm.
What's Benson's? Oh, Benson's Farm, the corn.
Yep.
Cool.
Yep. So we just actually today was opening day. May 1st is opening day for our greenhouse. So
Nice.
I've been working there for 10 years now, and I started
Cool.
that right outside of college.
And you don't
before I
like
started
veg
to do
salads?
this. Yeah. I like vegetables.
She likes corn. Corn is really a semi-vegetable because you put a lot of.
I would rather not eat just salad. I feel like a rabbit.
All right.
Got it. And personal life? Do you have a partner? Are you, what's
Yep, married, and we bought a house a couple years ago up Evero Hill. So
beautiful?
Nice.
Yeah.
So you talk about going to college. Where'd you go to college?
I went kind of all over the place, and then eventually dropped out. So I went to a college down in Texas my freshman year of college, and then moved to Dillon and went to UM Western. And
Did you
then,
participate in sports there?
I tried out for the softball team there. Didn't make that one. I made softball and volleyball team down in Texas.
Wow.
So,
Nice.
but they didn't have my major. So then I
Which
had to go back
was?
home. Secondary education. Physical. Yeah,
Great.
Physical education. So.
And Lauren, you?
I own my own house cleaning business, and I have my own tiny farm with goats and chickens and a garden and all that stuff. So
Nice.
that takes up most of my time now.
And she's married. And what does your husband do?
He's a contractor.
Right. Does he fight?
He has had a fight. He grappled his whole entire life, and then
he apologized to you and bought you a nice present, and that was the end of that.
or actually, I think it was when we first started dating. I didn't have a lot of training partners, and I did have to spar him, and he did give me my first bloody nose from fighting. So
Holy mackerel.
that's pretty romantic. It's
Very romantic.
Let's do this.
He also is one of our head coaches.
Oh, good.
Oh, he is?
At
Yes.
Zoo, yes. Or,
What's his name? Give him a shout out.
Derek Paulson.
Derek Paulson. All right, let's do this. No pun intended. Let's take a break and come back after that. We'll be with Jenn Greenwald and Lauren Wolfe. Back after these words. Arnie, we are back with Jenn and Lauren.
Jen, Lauren, tell me about the events that might be coming up for you personally and for, the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu school, and then how do people get a hold of you? How do they sign up?
Jen.
I'm sure a lot of our listeners are excited about that.
Yeah, so I run Zoo Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Our biggest competition for the whole team's coming up at the end of June over in Spokane. So I'm getting a lot of people prepped for that. And that'll be some super matches. So I'm trying to get some of my upper belts that don't have a bunch of people for them to compete with and to do super matches. So they'll have a whole walkout. They'll be on a stage. It's like a 6 to 8 minute match. So that'll
And what's
be
that
pretty fun.
event called?
Spokane Submission Challenge.
Nice.
And is
Over
there a
in Spokane.
website to find out more information?
Yeah, if you just visit www.zoobjj.com, that's where you can
Wait,
find me.
ZooBJJ?
Yeah,
It's a heck of an email.
Zoo
ZooBJJ.
Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
I know what it
Yes.
stands
Well, I'm
for.
saying it for our listeners, not for you. I know you just heard it, but for our listeners, Zoo JBB.
BJJ.
See, it's what I'm telling you. Don't.
Well, because you're getting me confused now. Okay.
If you Google
ZooBJJ, it'll come up.
ZooBJJ.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, and Lauren.
It's also Zoo BJJ on Instagram and Facebook as well.
Good.
And I'm just into that site because
And you guys are
That's the one.
friends,
Her-
which is nice.
Her picture is front and center on our website. So,
It is?
oh yeah,
How come?
because it's her flexing when she's ripped for fight camp. So
So she looks good.
I know her. I've known her for a number of years. I've seen her ripped.
yeah, it's an awesome picture.
Yes,
for
it's
sure.
kind of amazing.
That was the best part of fight camp. Getting ripped.
Getting shredded.
That's a place I've never been before. Shredded.
We have.
The only thing I've had shredded is
taco
night.
bar.
Taco night at the at the
Shredded
salad bar.
lettuce, shredded cheese.
Yeah.
That's actually a little bit better. Okay, I'd choose that over the other kind now.
And Lauren, if someone wants to get in touch with you, how do they do that with your house cleaning business?
Cleaning business is good, but I do actually have an Instagram for my hobby farm, which is Wolfe Homestead.
Spell that, please.
WOLFE Homestead. Do you need me to spell homestead?
No.
No, we got that.
Add Instagram.
that.
On Instagram, yes.
Perfect. You guys, will you come back? I don't know what that was, but will you come back again after a couple of months?
Yeah.
So we can check in with you
After
guys?
the Spokane event.
Yeah, after
we'll
the
hear how
Spokane
things
event.
went.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Yeah,
Good.
I'd love to.
What a delightful conversation. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Scott, this is one of our best shows.
It
I
was.
like this a lot.
I do too. All
Thank
right.
you for having us.
Thanks for coming.
Hey, it was a
Appreciate
pleasure. You take care.
You too.
All right. We'll see you next Sunday, Arnie.
See you next Sunday, Scott. Take care.
Thank you for listening to What Do You Know?
I can't wait for the next show, Scott.
I'm excited too, Arnie. If you'd like to suggest a guest, send me an email at scottrichmond@townsquaremedia.com. We'll see you next week. And thanks for listening to Newstalk KGVO.
This is the story of the one. As head of maintenance at a concert hall, he knows the show must always go on. That's why he works behind the scenes, ensuring every light is working, the HVAC is humming, and his facility shines. With Grainger's supplies and solutions for every challenge he faces, plus 24/7 customer support, his venue never misses a beat. Call quickgrainger.com or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.